You don't remember when it started. There was no single moment where you decided to become a perfectionist. It crept in quietly, disguised as responsibility, discipline, and ambition. At first, it felt like a strength. You were the one who noticed what others missed, the one who fixed mistakes before they became problems, the one who refused to settle. And people praised you for it. They called you mature, reliable, talented. What they didn't see was the pressure slowly tightening inside you. Your life becomes a constant negotiation with your own standards. Nothing ever feels finished. Even when something is good, your mind immediately jumps to how it could be better. You don't enjoy accomplishments for long because the flaws start speaking louder than the success. Compliments slide off you, but criticism stays. It replays. It grows teeth. It digs in. You live with a quiet fear of being exposed. Not because you're bad at what you do, but because you believe you're never quite good enough yet. You tell yourself, just a little more effort, just one more revision, just one more improvement, and that one more never ends. Rest feels undeserved. Satisfaction feels dangerous. If you relax, something might slip. If you stop pushing, you might fall behind. You start tying your worth to outcomes, to performance, to approval. When things go right, you feel temporary relief. When things go wrong or even slightly wrong, it feels personal. A small mistake feels like proof. Proof that you're careless. Proof that you're failing. Proof that everyone else will finally see what you've been trying so hard to hide. Perfectionism doesn't just live in your work. It follows you into your thoughts, into your relationships, into how you speak, how you look, how you exist. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said the wrong thing. You hesitate before expressing yourself, afraid it won't come out the right way. You edit yourself constantly, hoping to avoid judgment, misunderstanding, or rejection. You notice how hard it is for you to start things. People assume perfectionists are productive, but they don't see the paralysis. The fear of beginning because once you start, it has to be perfect. And if it can't be perfect, maybe it's safer not to start at all. Procrastination becomes your secret companion, not from laziness, but from pressure. The weight of expectations makes movement feel heavy. You become your own harshest critic. You talk to yourself in ways you would never speak to anyone else. You minimize your effort. You maximize your flaws. You set standards so high that even success feels like failure for not being flawless. And over time, this inner voice starts to sound normal, reasonable even. You tell yourself it's just motivation, just discipline, just high standards. But beneath that discipline is anxiety, a constant low-level tension that never fully leaves. Your body is always slightly braced, waiting for the next mistake, the next evaluation, the next moment where you have to prove yourself again. You struggle to relax without guilt. Even rest becomes something you feel you must earn. You start noticing resentment building inside you, toward people who seem comfortable being average, toward people who make mistakes and move on easily, toward people who don't overthink everything. Part of you envies them, another part judges them, and a deeper part wonders what it would feel like to live without this constant pressure. In relationships, perfectionism turns into control, often subtle, sometimes invisible even to you. You want things done a certain way. You want clarity. You want reassurance. You want things to feel stable and predictable. When they don't, your mind fills the gaps with worst-case scenarios. You overanalyze tone, silence, small changes. You look for certainty in a world that doesn't offer much of it. You struggle with vulnerability because showing your unfinished self feels risky. You're more comfortable presenting a polished version, capable, composed, put together. Letting someone see your doubts feels like failure. So you carry things alone. You fix yourself in private. You break quietly. And the most exhausting part is that it never feels like enough. No matter how much you achieve, the goalpost moves. The version of you that finally deserves peace always lives just a little further ahead. After the next milestone, after the next improvement, after the next proof that you're worthy. At some point, you start feeling tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. A mental fatigue, a deep weariness from constantly monitoring yourself, from never letting anything simply be, from always believing that love, rest, and acceptance are conditional earned only through performance. You don't hate being a perfectionist. You hate what it costs you. And slowly, you begin to realize that perfectionism was never about excellence. It was about fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of being rejected. Fear of not being enough as you are. You start tracing it back, slowly, honestly. The pressure didn't appear out of nowhere. It was learned, absorbed. Somewhere along the way, you realized that being good brought praise, and being exceptional brought safety. Maybe love felt warmer when you succeeded. Maybe attention came only when you impressed. Maybe mistakes were met with disappointment, silence, or comparison. So, you adapted. You learned to stay ahead of criticism by becoming it first. You learned that control felt safer than uncertainty, and perfection became your armor. As a child, you might have been called mature for your age, responsible, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who did things right. And while that identity earned approval, it quietly taught you that making errors was risky, that being imperfect meant being vulnerable. That safety came from getting things right. Over time, that belief hardened into a rule you lived by, even when no one was watching anymore. You confuse control with security. If everything is done correctly, nothing can fall apart. If you plan enough, prepare enough, improve enough, you can avoid pain. But life doesn't follow rules the way tasks do. People don't respond the way systems do. And no amount of perfection can guarantee outcomes. Yet you keep trying, because letting go feels like inviting chaos. Your mind becomes a constant problem-solving machine, always scanning for errors, always anticipating what could go wrong. You don't just live moments, you manage them. You measure yourself against imagined expectations. You adjust before anyone asks. And while this makes you competent, it also keeps you tense. Always alert, always bracing. Failure, even small, feels disproportionate. It hits something deep. It doesn't just say this didn't work, it whispers you are not enough. So, you avoid situations where failure feels visible. You stay in your comfort zones longer than you admit. You delay chances that matter because you want to be ready. Fully ready. Perfectly ready. And sometimes, ready never comes. You notice how hard it is to receive help. Accepting help feels like admitting weakness, like confirming that you couldn't handle it on your own. So, you carry more than you should. You overfunction. You become reliable to the point of exhaustion, and people start depending on you in ways that quietly drain you. Perfectionism also shapes how you love. You try to be the right partner, the understanding one, the consistent one. You monitor your reactions. You try not to need too much. You try not to ask for too much. And when relationships don't work, you immediately look inward. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? You search yourself for answers even when the problem wasn't yours to fix. You hold yourself to standards you don't apply to anyone else. You forgive others for being human, but deny yourself the same grace. You understand that people are flawed, complex, inconsistent, yet you expect yourself to be composed, productive, and emotionally regulated at all times. And when you inevitably fall short, the disappointment feels sharp. Over time, you start feeling disconnected from joy. Joy feels fragile, like it might distract you, like it might make you careless. You postpone happiness until things are done, until everything is in order, until you deserve it. But the list never ends. There is always something else to improve. And then there are moments, quiet ones, where you feel empty, despite doing everything right, where you look at your achievements and feel strangely untouched by them, where you wonder why success doesn't feel the way you were promised it would. You did everything you were supposed to do. You worked hard. You tried your best. And yet, something feels missing. That's when the truth starts to surface. Perfectionism was never about becoming your best self. It was about protecting your most afraid self. The part of you that learned early that mistakes cost something. The part of you that equated worth with performance. The part of you that believed love had conditions. And recognizing this doesn't instantly free you, but it softens something. You begin to notice how much energy goes into maintaining an image instead of experiencing life. How much tension lives in your body from constantly holding yourself together? How rarely you let yourself be unfinished? You start experimenting with small acts of imperfection, leaving something slightly undone, speaking before you've perfected the words, resting without earning it first. And at first, it feels wrong, uncomfortable, your anxiety spikes. But the world doesn't collapse. People don't leave. You're still here. Slowly, you learn that growth doesn't require cruelty, that excellence doesn't need self-punishment, that being human doesn't disqualify you from being worthy. You begin to separate effort from identity, mistakes from meaning, progress from perfection. You may always care deeply. You may always have high standards. That part of you doesn't disappear, but it changes shape. It becomes something you use, not something that uses you. And one day, you realize that your life doesn't need to be flawless to be meaningful. It just needs to be lived. You begin to understand that healing doesn't mean losing your edge. It doesn't mean becoming careless or lowering your standards until you no longer recognize yourself. It means changing the relationship you have with those standards. Instead of using them as a weapon against yourself, you start using them as a guide. You stop asking, "Is this perfect?" and start asking, "Is this honest? Is this enough for today?" And for the first time, that question doesn't feel like failure. You notice how much of your life was driven by fear pretending to be discipline, fear of slowing down, fear of disappointing, fear of being ordinary. And as that fear loosens its grip, even slightly, you feel a strange mix of relief and grief. Relief for the pressure you no longer carry as tightly. Grief for all the moments you spent tense, striving, and unsatisfied when you could have been present instead. You start allowing yourself to exist without constantly proving something. You do things for the sake of doing them, not optimizing them. You let yourself enjoy progress without rushing to the next improvement. You begin to experience moments fully instead of immediately evaluating them. And that simple shift feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, because your nervous system is used to tension. Calm feels suspicious at first. There are setbacks, days when the old voice comes back strong, telling you that you're slipping, that you're wasting time, that you should be doing more. But now you recognize the voice. You know where it comes from. And instead of obeying it automatically, you pause, you question it, you choose more gently, even when it feels unnatural. You learn that rest is not a reward. It's a requirement. That your worth doesn't fluctuate based on productivity. That being human means being inconsistent, unfinished, and still valuable. You begin to treat yourself the way you've always treated others, with understanding, patience, and room to grow. Perfectionism once promised you safety, but safety doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. Trust in your ability to recover. Trust in your resilience. Trust that mistakes won't destroy you. And as that trust grows, the need for perfection slowly fades. You don't become careless. You become free. Free to try without guaranteeing outcomes. Free to fail without collapsing. Free to succeed without immediately moving the goalpost. Free to be seen as you are, not just as you perform. Your life as a perfectionist doesn't end. It transforms. The pressure softens. The fear quiets. The standards remain. But they no longer suffocate you. And for the first time, you realize that peace was never waiting at the finish line. It was always available the moment you stopped demanding perfection from yourself.